Question 1. Comparative studies suggest that technicians often face ethical dilemmas when performing hardware repairs on devices containing sensitive personal information. A technician is tasked with replacing a hard drive on a customer's laptop. During the initial diagnostic phase, before the data transfer process begins, the technician notices that the drive contains clearly identifiable personal financial records and medical information. The technician has not yet accessed or copied any of this data. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately cease all diagnostic and repair activities, secure the device, and escalate the situation to a supervisor or designated privacy officer for guidance on proper handling procedures. Option B. Proceed with the repair but make a mental note to avoid any operations that might interact with the sensitive files, hoping they remain undisturbed. Option C. Continue with the hard drive replacement and data transfer as planned, assuming the customer is aware of the data on their drive and has consented to its handling. Option D. Attempt to quickly delete or anonymize the sensitive files before proceeding with the hard drive replacement to prevent potential future access. Correct answer is A. Immediately cease all diagnostic and repair activities, secure the device, and escalate the situation to a supervisor or designated privacy officer for guidance on proper handling procedures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a technician encounters sensitive customer data during a routine repair. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need to perform the repair effectively with the absolute requirement to protect customer privacy and adhere to data handling regulations. The technician must make a judgment call that upends the integrity of the repair process, while strictly avoiding any unauthorized access or disclosure of personal information. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing data privacy and regulatory compliance, by immediately ceasing the operation and escalating the issue to a supervisor or designated privacy officer. The technician adheres to established protocols for handling potential data breaches or privacy violations. This action ensures that the situation is managed by individuals trained in data protection laws and company policies, minimizing the risk of accidental disclosure or misuse of sensitive information. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, fundamental to privacy regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves continuing the data transfer after noticing the sensitive information. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It constitutes unauthorized access and potential disclosure of personal data, violating privacy laws that mandate strict control over how personal information is handled. Such an action could lead to severe legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the sensitive data and proceed with the repair as if it were not present. While seemingly benign, this still carries risks. If the repair process inadvertently involves or exposes this data, the technician could still be held responsible for a privacy violation. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of diligence in recognizing and appropriately responding to potential data security issues, which is a core ethical responsibility for IT professionals. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to delete or alter the sensitive data without explicit authorization or a clear understanding of its purpose and ownership. This action could be construed as tampering with evidence or unauthorized modification of customer data, leading to legal repercussions and a breach of trust. It bypasses established procedures for data handling and disposal, which are designed to ensure compliance and security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes compliance, security, and ethical conduct. When encountering sensitive data unexpectedly, the immediate steps should be to halt any action that could compromise the data, document the observation, and escalate the situation according to established company policy and relevant data protection regulations. This ensures that the situation is handled by the appropriate personnel with the necessary expertise to mitigate risks and maintain compliance. The guiding principle is to act with caution, transparency, and adherence to established protocols. Question 2. The performance metrics show intermittent slowdowns reported by a specific user on their workstation, but standard system-wide performance monitoring tools do not indicate any unusual resource utilization or errors. The user states that the system becomes unresponsive when they are working with specific large documents, What is the most appropriate next step for the technician? Option A. Immediately initiate a full system diagnostic scan and a defragmentation of the hard drive, as these are common solutions for general performance issues. Option B. Access the user's document folders directly to identify and analyze the large files, assuming this is necessary to diagnose the performance issue. Option C. Advise the user to avoid working with large documents and suggest they break them down into smaller files to mitigate the performance problem. Option D. Request explicit permission from the user to examine the specific large documents they are working with, and if granted, analyze their content and structure for potential corruption or excessive complexity that might be taxing system resources. The correct answer is D. Request explicit permission from the user to examine the specific large documents they are working with, and if granted, analyze their content and structure for potential corruption or excessive complexity that might be taxing system resources. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a user reports a performance issue that is not immediately reproducible or obvious through standard diagnostic tools. The difficulty lies in balancing the user's perceived problem with objective data, while also adhering to company policies and best practices for troubleshooting and data handling. The technician must avoid making assumptions, jumping to conclusions, or implementing solutions that could violate privacy or security protocols. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process that prioritizes user privacy and data security, aligning with general IT best practices and the spirit of regulations like HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. If patient data were involved, or similar data protection principles in other contexts, by first attempting to replicate the issue and then gathering system-level performance data without accessing user files, the technician respects user privacy. If further investigation is needed, obtaining explicit user consent before accessing any user-specific data is paramount. This methodical approach ensures that troubleshooting is effective, efficient, and compliant with privacy expectations and potential regulatory requirements regarding data access and handling. Incorrect approach is analysis. Accessing user files directly without explicit consent or a clear, documented policy allowing it is a significant privacy violation. This could contravene data protection laws and company policies, leading to disciplinary action and erosion of user trust. It bypasses the principle of least privilege and could expose sensitive personal or company information. Implementing a system-wide rollback or reinstallation based solely on a user's subjective report, without sufficient evidence or diagnostic data, is inefficient and disruptive, risks losing valuable user data or configurations, and does not address the root cause if it's not a system-wide issue. This approach lacks a data-driven decision-making process and can lead to unnecessary downtime and user frustration. Ignoring the user's report because the issue is not immediately apparent or reproducible is unprofessional and neglects the user's experience. While objective data is important, user perception of performance is also a valid concern that needs investigation. Dismissing the report without attempting basic diagnostics or further inquiry can lead to unresolved issues and dissatisfaction. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. This typically involves 1. Gathering information, listening to the user, asking clarifying questions. 2. Identifying the problem, attempting to replicate, checking logs. 3. Establishing a theory of probable cause based on initial findings. 4. Testing the theory to determine the cause. 5. Establishing a plan of action to resolve the problem and implement the solution. 6. Verifying full system functionality and, if applicable, implementing preventive measures. 7. Documenting findings, actions, and outcomes. Throughout this process, adherence to privacy policies and data security protocols is non-negotiable. When in doubt about data access, always seek explicit consent and follow established procedures. Question 3. To address the challenge of a user reporting intermittent system slowdowns and application unresponsiveness on their workstation, what is the most effective and professionally sound initial troubleshooting approach? Option A. Immediately reinstall the operating system to ensure a clean slate. Option B. Begin by systematically checking system resource utilization, CPU, RAM, disk I/O, and reviewing recent system and application logs for errors or unusual activity. Option C. Assume the issue is malware-related and initiate a full system scan with the antivirus software. Option D. Replace the workstation's primary storage drive, as storage is often a bottleneck for performance. The correct answer is A. Immediately reinstall the operating system to ensure a clean slate. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a user reports a performance issue that could stem from various sources, including hardware, software, or network configurations. Professional challenge lies in efficiently diagnosing the root cause without disrupting the user's workflow unnecessarily or violating data privacy principles. The need for a systematic approach is paramount to avoid misdiagnosis and ensure a timely resolution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a methodical troubleshooting process that begins with gathering information from the user and then systematically isolating potential causes. This aligns with best professional practices by prioritizing user experience and minimizing downtime. It also implicitly adheres to data privacy guidelines by focusing on system performance rather than accessing sensitive user data without explicit justification or consent. The process of checking system logs, resource utilization, and performing basic network diagnostics are standard, non-intrusive steps. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately reinstalling the operating system. This is a drastic measure that can lead to data loss and significant downtime for the user. It bypasses crucial diagnostic steps and is an inefficient use of resources. Ethically, it could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence in troubleshooting. Another incorrect approach is to immediately replace hardware components without proper diagnosis. This is costly and can be unnecessary if the issue is software-related. It demonstrates a lack of systematic troubleshooting and could lead to a violation of company policy regarding hardware procurement and replacement. A third incorrect approach is to assume the issue is related to malware and immediately run a full system scan, without first checking for more common performance bottlenecks like high CPU or memory usage. A malware is a possibility. It's not the most probable cause for general performance degradation, and jumping to this conclusion can waste time and resources. It also might involve accessing user files during the scan, which, while often permitted for security scans, should ideally be a later step after ruling out simpler causes. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. This typically involves 1. Gathering information. Understand the user's description of the problem when it started and any recent changes. 2. Establishing a theory of probable cause. Based on the information, form hypotheses about potential issues. 3. Testing the theory to determine the cause. Implement diagnostic steps to confirm or deny hypotheses. 4. Establishing a plan of action to resolve the problem. Outline the steps needed for repair. 5. Implementing the solution. Carry out the plan. 6. Verifying full system functionality. Ensure the problem is resolved and the system is stable. 7. Documenting findings, actions, and outcomes. Record the process for future reference and knowledge sharing. This systematic approach ensures efficiency, minimizes disruption, and upholds professional standards by avoiding hasty and potentially damaging actions. Question 4. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a technician performing a hard drive replacement on a customer's computer has discovered files that appear to contain personally identifiable information, PI, and potentially financial records. The technician needs to complete the repair promptly to meet service level agreements. Which of the following actions best adheres to professional and regulatory best practices? Option A. Securely isolate the sensitive files and proceed with the repair, ensuring the data is not accessed or copied. Option B. Ignore the files and proceed with the hard drive replacement, assuming the customer will manage their own data security. Option C. Access and review the sensitive files to confirm their nature before proceeding with the repair. Option D. Delete the sensitive files to ensure they are not compromised during the repair process. The correct answer is A. Securely isolate the sensitive files and proceed with the repair, ensuring the data is not accessed or copied. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a technician encounters sensitive customer data during a routine repair. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need to perform the repair efficiently with the absolute requirement to protect customer privacy and comply with data protection regulations. The technician must make a judgment call without direct supervision, understanding the potential consequences of mishandling sensitive information. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves isolating and anonymizing the data before proceeding with the repair. This aligns with best practices for data privacy and security, as mandated by regulations like the U.S. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if the data were health-related, or the U.S. Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA, if it involved minors, and general principles of data minimization and confidentiality applicable under various U.S. federal and state privacy laws. By anonymizing or securely isolating the data, the technician upholds their professional responsibility to protect customer information, preventing unauthorized access or disclosure. This proactive measure ensures that the repair can be completed without compromising the integrity or confidentiality of the sensitive data, thereby avoiding potential legal liabilities and reputational damage for the company and the technician. Incorrect approaches analysis. Ignoring the sensitive data and proceeding with the repair without any precautions is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach violates principles of data confidentiality and could lead to breaches of privacy laws, resulting in substantial fines and legal action. Demonstrates a lack of due diligence and professional responsibility. Accessing or copying the sensitive data for personal review or curiosity is a severe ethical and legal violation. This constitutes unauthorized access and potential misuse of private information, directly contravening data protection laws and professional conduct standards. Such actions can lead to severe penalties, including criminal charges. Deleting or altering the sensitive data, even with the intention of cleaning up the system, is also a critical failure. This action can be construed as data destruction or tampering, which is illegal and unethical. It deprives the customer of their data and can have serious legal ramifications, especially if the data is required for legal or business purposes. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach situations involving sensitive data with a framework of privacy by design and security by default. This involves 1. Identification, recognizing the presence of sensitive data. 2. Assessment, understanding the potential risks associated with that data. 3. Mitigation, implementing appropriate measures to protect the data such as anonymization, encryption, or secure isolation. 4. Documentation, recording the steps taken to protect the data. 5. Escalation, if unsure about the correct procedure or if the data is exceptionally sensitive, escalating the issue to a supervisor or a designated privacy officer. This systematic approach ensures compliance with regulations, upholds ethical standards, and builds trust with customers. Question 5. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual spike in network traffic originating from a specific user's workstation, potentially indicating a security incident. What is the most appropriate next step for the IT security team? Option A. Dismiss the alert as a likely false positive and continue with routine system maintenance. Option B. Initiate a formal incident response process involving authorized security personnel to investigate the traffic logs and determine the nature of the activity. Option C. Immediately share the raw network traffic logs with all members of the IT department to solicit their input on the unusual activity. Option D. Immediately disable the user's account and shut down the affected network segment to contain any potential threat. The correct answer is B. Initiate a formal incident response process involving authorized security personnel to investigate the traffic logs and determine the nature of the activity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for system security and data integrity with the potential for user privacy concerns. The monitoring system's output, while valuable for identifying security threats, could inadvertently expose sensitive user information if not handled appropriately. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the actions taken are both effective in addressing the security issue and compliant with relevant privacy regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and authorized investigation. By involving the appropriate security personnel and following established incident response procedures, the organization ensures that the data is handled by trained professionals who understand the legal and ethical implications. This approach aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that the investigation is focused on the security incident and that any access data is used solely for that purpose. This adheres to the spirit of data protection regulations by preventing unauthorized access or misuse of user information. An incorrect approach that involves immediately sharing the raw monitoring logs with all IT staff fails to respect user privacy. This broad dissemination could expose sensitive personal information to individuals who do not have a legitimate need to access it, violating principles of data minimization and potentially leading to privacy breaches. It also bypasses established security protocols, increasing the risk of accidental data exposure or misuse. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the alert because it might be a false positive, is professionally negligent. This inaction could allow a genuine security threat to persist, potentially leading to data breaches, financial losses, or reputational damage. It demonstrates a failure to uphold the organization's responsibility to protect its systems and user data, and it disregards the potential impact of a security incident. A third incorrect approach, which is to immediately shut down the affected service without investigation, is an overreaction that can disrupt business operations unnecessarily. While swift action is sometimes required, a lack of initial investigation means the root cause of the alert is unknown. This could lead to the same issue recurring or the implementation of ineffective countermeasures, demonstrating poor problem solving and potentially causing more harm than good by impacting legitimate users. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a tiered approach. First, assess the severity and potential impact of the alert. Second, consult established incident response plans and security policies. Third, involve the appropriate security personnel for investigation. Fourth, ensure all actions taken are documented and comply with data privacy regulations. Finally, implement corrective actions based on a thorough understanding of the incident. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal that a technician has been sharing raw customer diagnostic logs, which may contain personally identifiable information, PI, with a third-party vendor for troubleshooting purposes without any data sanitization. The technician argues that the vendor needs the complete logs to identify the root cause of recurring software issues. Which of the following actions best addresses this situation while adhering to professional and regulatory best practices? Option A. Redact all personally identifiable information from the diagnostic logs before sharing them with the third-party vendor. Option B. Share the raw diagnostic logs with the vendor, but include a written disclaimer stating the company is not liable for any data breaches. Option C. Immediately stop sharing all diagnostic logs with the vendor until a comprehensive data anonymization policy is formally developed and approved. Option D. Share the raw diagnostic logs with the vendor, assuming the vendor has their own robust data security protocols in place. The correct answer is A. Redact all personally identifiable information from the diagnostic logs before sharing them with the third-party vendor. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to data privacy and security, specifically concerning the handling of personally identifiable information, PI, within a business context. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency and data analysis with the legal and ethical obligations to protect customer data. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure compliance with relevant regulations and maintain customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data minimization and anonymization, which are fundamental principles in data protection frameworks like the US-based regulations relevant to the CompTIA, a plus certification. By redacting sensitive information before sharing, the technician adheres to the principle of least privilege and reduces the risk of unauthorized disclosure or misuse of PII. This proactive measure aligns with the spirit and letter of data privacy laws, which mandate safeguarding sensitive data. An incorrect approach that involves sharing the raw data without redaction fails to uphold data privacy obligations. This could lead to violations of regulations such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if health information is involved, or the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA, if minors' data is present, or even general data breach notification laws if PII is compromised. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for customer confidentiality and can severely damage the company's reputation and lead to legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, which involves delaying the sharing of data until a formal data anonymization policy is developed, is also professionally problematic. While policy development is important, An indefinite delay in providing necessary information for quality control can hinder business operations and problem solving. It suggests an inability to adapt to immediate needs while maintaining compliance, indicating a lack of practical risk management. The absence of a policy does not absolve the technician of the responsibility to handle sensitive data with care in the interim. A third, incorrect approach, which involves sharing the data with a disclaimer of liability, is insufficient. Disclaimers of liability do not negate legal obligations to protect PII. Relying solely on a disclaimer is a passive and inadequate response to a proactive data protection requirement. It suggests an attempt to circumvent responsibility rather than to actively implement protective measures, which is a failure in professional due diligence and regulatory compliance. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. First, identify the type of data involved and its sensitivity. Second, determine the intended use of the data and who will have access to it. Third, consult relevant data privacy policies and legal requirements. Fourth, implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect the data, such as anonymization, pseudonymization, or access controls. If immediate action is required and a formal policy is lacking, the technician should apply the most stringent protective measures available based on general best practices and legal principles until a definitive policy is established. Question 7. Consider a scenario where a remote user reports a critical application is crashing repeatedly. The application handles sensitive financial data. As a technician, you need to diagnose the issue, which may involve examining application logs and potentially temporary files. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with data privacy and security best practices? Option A. Inform the user about the potential need to access their system and obtain explicit consent before proceeding with any data examination or troubleshooting steps. Option B. Download the application logs and temporary files to your local machine for offline analysis to prevent any direct access to the user's live system. Option C. Immediately escalate the issue to a senior technician without attempting any initial diagnosis to avoid any potential data exposure. Option D. Remotely access the user's system. Examine application logs and temporary files to identify the cause of the crash, and then resolve the issue. The correct answer is D. Remotely access the user's system, examine application logs and temporary files to identify the cause of the crash, and then resolve the issue. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it involves balancing the need for efficient troubleshooting with the critical requirement of protecting sensitive customer data. A technician must act swiftly to resolve a technical issue, but any action taken must adhere strictly to data privacy regulations and company policies. The core of the challenge lies in identifying and mitigating potential data exposure risks during the troubleshooting process without compromising the integrity of the customer's system or their privacy. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data security and customer privacy by obtaining explicit consent before accessing or manipulating any data. This aligns with the principles of data protection, which are fundamental in IT support. Specifically in the U.S. context, this approach is guided by regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data and general principles of data privacy that are often codified in company policies and implied by customer service agreements. Obtaining consent ensures transparency and accountability, minimizing the risk of legal repercussions and maintaining customer trust. An incorrect approach that involves accessing customer data without explicit permission, even with the intention of troubleshooting, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action directly violates privacy expectations and potentially breaches data protection laws. For instance, unauthorized access to personal identifiable information, PI, or protected health information, FI, can lead to severe penalties, including fines and legal action under various U.S. federal and state laws. Another incorrect approach, such as sharing diagnostic information with unauthorized third parties, even if anonymized, also constitutes a breach of trust and a violation of data handling policies, potentially exposing the company to reputational damage and legal liability. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear, step-by-step decision-making framework. First, assess the nature of the technical issue and the potential data involved. Second, consult relevant company policies and any applicable regulatory requirements regarding data access and handling. Third, if data access is necessary, obtain explicit, informed consent from the customer, clearly outlining what data will be accessed and why. Fourth, perform troubleshooting actions with the minimum necessary data access and ensure all data is handled securely. Finally, document all actions taken and any consent received. This structured approach ensures that technical issues are resolved effectively while upholding ethical standards and legal obligations. Question 8. The investigation demonstrates that a small business owner has implemented a system where all employees share a single set of login credentials to access a database containing customer personal information, including names, addresses, and payment details. The owner believes this simplifies management and ensures everyone can access the data they need. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and compliant method for managing access to this sensitive customer data? Option A. Store the customer database on a publicly accessible cloud storage service with a link shared with all employees for easy access. Option B. Implement unique login credentials for each employee, enforce strong password policies, and configure role-based access controls to grant access only to the data necessary for each employee's job function. Option C. Continue using the shared login credentials, but instruct employees to be extra careful when accessing and handling customer data. Option D. Provide all employees with full administrative privileges to the customer database to ensure they have unrestricted access to all information. The correct answer is B. Implement unique login credentials for each employee, enforce strong password policies, and configure role-based access controls to grant access only to the data necessary for each employee's job function. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common scenario involving the handling of sensitive customer data within a small business environment. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient data access for business operations with the critical requirement to protect customer privacy and comply with data protection regulations. This requires a nuanced understanding of data security best practices and the legal obligations of data controllers. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data security and compliance with relevant regulations, such as the U.S. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if health information is involved, or general data privacy principles under state laws like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA if applicable. Implementing strong access controls, encryption, and regular security audits ensures that customer data is protected from unauthorized access and breaches. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Adhering to the principle of least privilege ensures that only necessary personnel have access to sensitive information, further mitigating risk. An incorrect approach that involves sharing login credentials among employees is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This practice directly violates data protection principles by creating an uncontrolled access environment, making it impossible to audit who accessed what data and when. It increases the likelihood of accidental or intentional data misuse and breaches, leading to potential violations of privacy laws and significant fines. Another incorrect approach, such as storing sensitive customer data in an unencrypted format on a shared network drive accessible to all employees, also represents a severe ethical and regulatory lapse. This exposes the data to unauthorized access and theft, failing to meet the standard of care expected for protecting personal information and potentially violating data breach notification laws if a compromise occurs. Finally, neglecting to implement any form of access control or data segregation, allowing all employees to view all customer records regardless of their role, is a fundamental failure in data governance and privacy protection, exposing the business to substantial legal and ethical liabilities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the type of data being handled and the applicable regulatory requirements. This should be followed by a risk assessment to understand potential vulnerabilities. Based on this assessment, a data security policy should be developed and implemented, incorporating principles of least privilege, data encryption, access logging, and regular security training for all staff. Regular audits and updates to security measures are crucial to maintain compliance and protect sensitive information. Question 9. Upon reviewing a user's urgent request to access a shared drive containing sensitive customer financial data from an unfamiliar public Wi-Fi network, what is the most appropriate course of action for a support technician? Option A. Instruct the user to disable their firewall and antivirus software to ensure a stable connection to the shared drive. Option B. Immediately grant the user temporary elevated access to the shared drive to expedite their work, with a reminder to change their password later. Option C. Provide the user with a temporary, less secure method to transfer a copy of the data to their local device for immediate review. Option D. Advise the user to connect to a secure, trusted network and use a VPN before attempting to access the sensitive data. The correct answer is D. Advise the user to connect to a secure, trusted network and use a VPN before attempting to access the sensitive data. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support, balancing user convenience with security best practices and regulatory compliance. The professional must navigate the immediate need for access with the long-term implications of data security and potential breaches. The core of the challenge lies in understanding the sensitivity of the data being accessed and the appropriate controls required by industry standards and potential regulations, even if not explicitly stated in the prompt. The CompTIA A+ exam implies adherence to general IT best practices which align with common regulatory principles. The correct approach prioritizes security and compliance by ensuring that access to sensitive data is granted only after proper authentication and authorization, adhering to the principle of least privilege. This aligns with general IT security frameworks and ethical responsibilities to protect data. By requiring a documented request and approval process, the technician ensures accountability and a clear audit trail, which is crucial for compliance and incident response. This method upholds the integrity of the data and the organization's security posture. An incorrect approach that bypasses standard security protocols for expediency creates significant risks. Granting access without proper verification or documentation violates fundamental security principles and could lead to unauthorized access, data leakage, or misuse of sensitive information. Failure to follow established procedures can have severe consequences, including reputational damage, financial penalties, and loss of customer trust. Furthermore, such actions can be seen as a breach of professional ethics, as they demonstrate a disregard for the organization's security policies and the protection of its assets. Another incorrect approach, such as providing a temporary, insecure workaround, also fails to meet security standards. While seemingly helpful in the short term, it introduces vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to a security incident. This demonstrates a lack of foresight and an inability to balance immediate needs with long-term security requirements. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of organizational policies, the sensitivity of the data involved, and the potential risks associated with any proposed solution. When faced with a request that deviates from standard procedures, the technician should first assess the legitimacy of the request and the urgency. If the request is valid but requires a deviation, the technician should consult with their supervisor or the appropriate security personnel to obtain authorization and guidance. The goal is always to find a solution that is both effective and secure, adhering to established protocols and best practices to maintain data integrity and organizational security. Question 10. Process analysis reveals that a user is repeatedly experiencing unexpected application crashes on their workstation, which has been happening intermittently for the past week. The user has mentioned that the crashes seem to occur more frequently when they are accessing a specific shared network drive. The technician has been asked to resolve the issue promptly. Which of the following actions should the technician take first to address this recurring problem? Option A. Immediately disable the antivirus software on the user's workstation to see if it is interfering with the application's functionality. Option B. Advise the user to stop accessing the shared network drive until the issue is resolved, without further investigation. Option C. Instruct the user to reformat their hard drive and reinstall the operating system to ensure a clean environment. Option D. Collect system event logs, application logs, and network connection logs from the user's workstation to identify patterns and error messages related to the crashes. The correct answer is D. Collect system event logs, application logs, and network connection logs from the user's workstation to identify patterns and error messages related to the crashes. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support, balancing user convenience with security best practices and regulatory compliance. Professional challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the recurring issue without compromising sensitive data or violating established security policies. The technician must act as a trusted advisor, ensuring that solutions are both effective and compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based investigation that adheres to established security protocols. By documenting the issue, gathering logs, and consulting internal knowledge bases and vendor documentation, the technician is following a structured problem-solving methodology. This method minimizes the risk of introducing new vulnerabilities, ensures that any proposed solution is well-researched, and provides a clear audit trail. This aligns with the principles of responsible data handling and system integrity, which are implicitly supported by the general ethical guidelines expected of IT professionals, even without specific U.S. regulatory mandates being directly invoked for this particular scenario. The focus is on maintaining a secure and functional environment. An incorrect approach that involves immediately resetting user credentials without proper investigation fails to address the underlying cause of the recurring issue. This is professionally unacceptable because it is a reactive measure that does not solve the problem and could lead to repeated disruptions. Furthermore, it bypasses diagnostic steps that might reveal a more systemic issue, such as a malware infection or a misconfiguration, which could have broader security implications. Another incorrect approach, such as disabling security features to test if they are causing the problem, is a severe ethical and professional failure. This directly compromises the security posture of the system and potentially exposes sensitive data to unauthorized access, violating the implicit trust placed in the IT professional to maintain a secure environment. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of security principles and a disregard for potential consequences. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves sharing sensitive system configuration details with the user for them to fix it themselves is also professionally unacceptable. This not only abdicates responsibility, but also risks the user inadvertently causing further damage or exposing confidential information. It undermines the role of IT support and can lead to inconsistent and insecure configurations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the reported problem thoroughly. 2. Consulting available documentation and knowledge bases. 3. Following a systematic diagnostic process starting with the least intrusive steps. 4. Prioritizing security and data integrity throughout the troubleshooting process. 5. Documenting all steps taken and findings. 6. Escalating the issue if it falls outside of one's expertise or requires higher-level authorization. 7. Communicating clearly and professionally with the user. Question 11. Examination of the data shows that a user's personal laptop, which is also used for work purposes and contains company-sensitive files, is exhibiting unusual network activity. The user is currently unavailable. The IT support technician suspects that the device may be compromised and could be exfiltrating company data. The technician needs to investigate the device to confirm the threat and mitigate any potential damage. What is the most appropriate course of action for the IT support technician to take in this situation, adhering strictly to U.S. regulatory frameworks and ethical IT practices? Option A. Contact the user's direct manager to request permission to access the device, explaining the suspected security threat and the need to protect company data. Option B. Access the device under the assumption that company policy grants implicit permission for IT to investigate any device used for work, especially when security threats are suspected. Option C. Immediately access the device to investigate the network activity and secure company data, as the presence of company data on the device necessitates immediate action to protect organizational assets. Option D. Wait for the user to become available and obtain their explicit, informed consent before accessing any part of the device, documenting the consent process thoroughly. Correct answer is C. Immediately access the device to investigate the network activity and secure company data, as the presence of company data on the device necessitates immediate action to protect organizational assets. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a user's personal device contains sensitive company data. The professional must balance the user's privacy expectations with the organization's security and data protection obligations. The challenge lies in navigating potential legal and policy implications without overstepping boundaries or compromising security. Correct approach analysis. Accessing the device only after obtaining explicit, informed consent from the user and documenting this consent aligns with best professional practices and regulatory frameworks like the U.S.'s Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if health data is involved, or the general principles of data privacy and security mandated by various U.S. federal and state laws. This approach respects user privacy while ensuring that any access is authorized and auditable. It also adheres to the principle of least privilege, ensuring that access is only granted when necessary and with proper authorization. Incorrect approaches analysis. Accessing the device without any form of consent, even if the data is company-related, is a direct violation of privacy rights and potentially illegal under U.S. federal and state laws governing data access and privacy. This action could lead to legal repercussions for the IT professional and the organization, including fines and lawsuits. It also erodes user trust and creates a hostile work environment. Accessing the device with implied consent, such as assuming the user agrees because it's a company device, is insufficient. Many U.S. privacy laws require explicit consent for accessing personal information, even on company-owned equipment, especially if it's mixed with personal data. Implied consent is often not legally defensible and can lead to significant legal challenges. Contacting the user's manager for permission without involving the user directly, while seemingly a step towards authorization, bypasses the user's right to be informed and to consent to access of their personal space on the device. This can create a perception of surveillance and can be problematic if the manager then instructs the IT professional to access data that might be considered privileged or outside the scope of the initial concern, potentially violating attorney-client privilege or other confidential communications. Professional reasoning. When faced with a situation involving potential data compromise on a user's device, a professional should follow a structured decision-making process. 1. Identify the potential risk and the scope of the issue. 2. Consult relevant company policies regarding data security, privacy, and device usage. 3. If personal data is suspected, prioritize obtaining explicit, informed consent from the user. 4. Document all communications and consent obtained. 5. If consent cannot be obtained and the risk is significant, escalate the issue to management or legal counsel according to company policy. 6. Perform actions only within the scope of authorized access and for the specific purpose of addressing the identified risk. Question 12. Performance analysis shows that a user's workstation is experiencing intermittent slowdowns, affecting their ability to complete tasks efficiently. The user reports that the issue began a few days ago and is not tied to a specific application. The workstation is running a standard business operating system and has been in use for approximately 2 years. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the IT support technician? Option A. Advise the user to restart their computer and inform them that performance issues are often temporary and resolve themselves. Option B. Begin reinstalling the operating system to ensure a clean slate and eliminate potential software conflicts. Option C. Immediately schedule a hardware diagnostic test for the hard drive and RAM, as these are common failure points for older workstations. Option D. Check for recently installed software or updates, review system logs for errors, and monitor resource utilization, CPU, RAM, disk, during periods of reported slowdown. The correct answer is D. Check for recently installed software or updates, review system logs for errors, and monitor resource utilization, CPU, RAM, disk, during periods of reported slowdown. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a user reports a performance issue that could stem from various sources, including hardware, software, or network configuration. The professional's task is to diagnose the root cause efficiently and effectively while adhering to best practices and potential security implications. The challenge lies in avoiding assumptions and systematically troubleshooting to prevent further issues or data compromise. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, layered troubleshooting methodology. starting with the most common and easily verifiable causes, such as checking for background processes, consuming resources, or ensuring the operating system and drivers are up to date, is crucial. This aligns with ITIL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library, Principles for Incident Management, which emphasize rapid restoration of service through structured problem solving. Furthermore, verifying the user's understanding of expected performance and documenting the steps taken are essential for knowledge base creation and future reference, promoting continuous improvement. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of introducing new problems and ensures a thorough investigation. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately assume a hardware failure and suggest replacing components without proper diagnostics. This is professionally unsound because it can lead to unnecessary expenditure and downtime if the issue is software-related. Ethically, it breaches the principle of providing cost-effective solutions. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the user's concern without investigation, attributing it to user error or perception. This is a failure in customer service and can lead to user dissatisfaction and a loss of trust. It also neglects the professional responsibility to investigate reported issues thoroughly. A third incorrect approach is to immediately begin making significant system configuration changes without understanding the user's workflow or the potential impact. This can lead to data loss or system instability, violating the principle of do no harm and potentially contravening data protection guidelines if sensitive information is involved. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured troubleshooting framework, such as the OSI model or a layered approach: hardware, operating system, applications, network. This involves gathering information, identifying the problem, establishing a theory of probable cause, testing the theory, establishing a plan of action, implementing the solution, verifying functionality, and documenting findings. When faced with performance issues, it's vital to start with the simplest explanations and progressively move to more complex ones, always considering the user's perspective and the potential impact of any changes. Question 13. Market research demonstrates that a significant portion of users in the sales department are requesting access to a specific cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) tool that is not currently on the company's approved software list. The IT department has not evaluated this particular CRM for security compliance, licensing, or integration capabilities. A sales representative approaches you, the IT support technician, and explains that this CRM is crucial for their workflow and asks if you can install it on their work computer immediately. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Advise the sales representative to purchase a personal license for the CRM and install it on their work computer themselves. Option B. Inform the sales representative that the software is not on the approved list and explain that you can initiate the process to evaluate it for potential inclusion, offering to help them document their needs for the evaluation. Option C. Politely decline the request, stating that you cannot assist with unsanctioned software installations. Option D. Immediately install the requested CRM software on the sales representative's computer to ensure their productivity. The correct answer is B. Inform the sales representative that the software is not on the approved list and explain that you can initiate the process to evaluate it for potential inclusion, offering to help them document their needs for the evaluation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a user requests assistance with software that is not officially supported by the organization. The professional challenge lies in balancing user productivity and satisfaction with the organization's security policies, licensing agreements, and support capabilities. Unsanctioned software can introduce security vulnerabilities, create compatibility issues with existing systems, and lead to legal repercussions if licensing terms are violated. The IT professional must navigate these risks while still aiming to provide a helpful solution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to organizational policies and best practices for software management. This involves understanding the user's need, investigating the requested software's compliance with company standards, security, licensing, supportability, and offering approved alternatives or a formal process for evaluating new software. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT asset management and risk mitigation, ensuring that the organization's digital environment remains secure and compliant. It also demonstrates a commitment to providing sustainable and supported solutions, rather than quick fixes that could lead to future problems. Incorrect approach is analysis. Installing the unsanctioned software immediately without verification poses significant risks. This action bypasses established security protocols, potentially exposing the network to malware or data breaches. It also violates licensing agreements if the software is not properly licensed for organizational use, leading to legal and financial penalties. Furthermore, it creates a support burden for the IT department, as they are not equipped to troubleshoot issues with unsupported applications. Suggesting the user purchase a personal license and install it themselves, while seemingly shifting responsibility, still carries risks. The organization may still be liable if the software causes network issues or security breaches. It also undermines the IT department's role in managing and securing the company's technology infrastructure, and could lead to inconsistent software usage across the organization. Ignoring the request entirely is unprofessional and detrimental to user productivity and morale. While it avoids immediate risk, it fails to address the user's underlying need and can lead to frustration and the user seeking unapproved solutions independently, which could be even more problematic. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such requests by first understanding the user's objective. Then, they should consult organizational policies regarding software acquisition and usage. If the requested software is not on the approved list, the next step is to research its security implications, licensing terms, and compatibility. If it appears beneficial, the professional should initiate the formal process for evaluating and approving new software, which typically involves IT management and potentially legal review. If the software is deemed unsuitable or too risky, the professional should clearly explain the reasons to the user and offer alternative, approved solutions that meet their needs. Question 14. Analysis of a user's request to access a shared drive containing customer financial records for a personal data analysis project, which is outside their defined job responsibilities. The IT support technician is aware that the company has strict data access policies and is mindful of potential data privacy regulations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the technician? Option A. Immediately escalate the request to a manager without explaining the policy to the user. Option B. Politely explain that the request cannot be fulfilled due to company policy and data privacy regulations, and offer to help the user find publicly available data if applicable. Option C. Grant the user access to the shared drive, assuming their intentions are good and they will not misuse the data. Option D. Inform the user that it cannot help with personal projects and ignore further inquiries about the data. The correct answer is B. Politely explain that the request cannot be fulfilled due to company policy and data privacy regulations, and offer to help the user find publicly available data if applicable. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support, where a user requests access to sensitive company data for a personal project. The professional must balance the user's request with the organization's security policies and data privacy regulations. The challenge lies in understanding the potential risks associated with unauthorized data access, the legal implications of data breaches, and the ethical responsibility to protect company and customer information. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves politely but firmly explaining that the request cannot be fulfilled due to company policy and data privacy regulations. This upholds the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security concept that ensures users only have access to the data and resources necessary for their job functions. It also aligns with data protection laws, such as those that might be enforced under U.S. federal regulations or state-specific privacy acts, which mandate strict controls over access to sensitive information to prevent unauthorized disclosure and misuse. By adhering to policy and regulations, the technician demonstrates professionalism and protects the organization from potential legal and reputational damage. Incorrect approach is analysis. Granting access without authorization or proper justification is a direct violation of company security policies and potentially data privacy laws. This could lead to data breaches, identity theft, and significant legal penalties for the organization. It undermines the principle of least privilege and creates a security vulnerability. Escalating the request to a manager without first attempting to de-escalate or explain policy is inefficient and can create unnecessary bureaucracy. Escalation is sometimes necessary, It should be a last resort after the technician has clearly communicated the boundaries and reasons for denial based on established guidelines. This approach fails to demonstrate proactive problem-solving within the technician's scope of responsibility. Ignoring the request or providing a vague, unhelpful response is unprofessional and does not address the user's underlying need or the security implications. This can lead to user frustration, a perception of poor IT support, and potentially the user seeking unauthorized means to access the data, thereby increasing risk. It fails to uphold the technician's duty to inform and guide users according to established protocols. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such requests by first understanding the user's need. Then, they must consult and strictly adhere to the organization's established security policies and relevant data privacy regulations. If the request falls outside these parameters, the professional should clearly and politely explain the limitations, citing policy and regulatory reasons. If the user insists or the situation is complex, a documented escalation to a supervisor or security team is appropriate, providing all relevant details of the request and the reasons for denial. The decision-making process should prioritize data security, regulatory compliance, and ethical conduct. Question 15. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new, specialized graphic design application would significantly boost a marketing team's productivity. However, the application is not on the company's approved software list, and its installation requires elevated administrative privileges. A user from the marketing team has directly requested that you, the IT support technician, install it for them immediately to meet a critical deadline. What is the most appropriate course of action for the IT support technician? Option A. Download the software from a third-party website and install it to expedite the process, assuming it is a legitimate application. Option B. Install the software as requested, as the user has a critical deadline and the potential productivity gains outweigh the perceived risk. Option C. Inform the user that the software is not approved and refuse to install it, advising them to use existing company-approved tools. Option D. Escalate the request to the IT security team or management for review and approval, explaining the user's need and the software's potential benefits. The correct answer is B. Install the software as requested, as the user has a critical deadline and the potential productivity gains outweigh the perceived risk. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support, balancing user convenience and data security with established organizational policies. The technician must navigate the potential risks associated with unauthorized software installation, while adhering to the principle of least privilege and the organization's security posture. The professional challenge lies in the technician's responsibility to both enable user productivity and protect the company's digital assets from potential threats, such as malware or data breaches, which could have significant financial and reputational consequences. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes security and compliance. By escalating the request to the appropriate IT security personnel, the technician ensures that the software is vetted for security vulnerabilities and compliance with company policy before installation. This aligns with the principle of defense in depth and the need for centralized control over software deployment to maintain a secure and manageable IT environment. It also upholds the technician's role as a guardian of organizational security, rather than an enabler of potential risks. An incorrect approach that involves installing the software without proper authorization or vetting would represent a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This bypasses established security protocols, potentially introducing malware or non-compliant software into the network, which could lead to data breaches, system instability, or violations of data privacy regulations. Such an action undermines the organization's security posture and could result in disciplinary action, fines, or legal liabilities for the company. Another incorrect approach, such as outright refusing the request without offering an alternative or explanation, demonstrates poor customer service and a lack of problem-solving initiative. While security is paramount, IT professionals are also expected to facilitate user needs within acceptable parameters. This approach fails to explore legitimate solutions or to educate the user on the reasons behind the policy, potentially leading to user frustration and workarounds that could be even less secure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of organizational policies, a commitment to security best practices, and effective communication. When faced with a request that deviates from standard procedures, the technician should first assess the potential risk and benefit. If the request involves security implications or policy exceptions, the appropriate course of action is to consult with or escalate to the relevant IT security or management team. This ensures that decisions are made by those with the authority and expertise to evaluate risks and approve or deny requests based on a comprehensive understanding of the organization's security and operational needs. Question 16. The assessment process reveals that a technician, while performing a routine hardware diagnostic on a customer's laptop, discovers a folder containing what appears to be highly sensitive financial documents. The technician needs to ensure the laptop is functioning correctly, but is unsure of the best course of action regarding the discovered files. Option A. Copy the sensitive financial documents to a secure company server for later review and potential use in troubleshooting any related system issues. Option B. Secure the sensitive files without accessing their content, document the discovery, and inform the customer or their designated representative for further instructions before proceeding with the diagnostic. Option C. Proceed with the hardware diagnostic as planned, assuming the files are not directly related to the hardware issue and do not require special handling. Option D. Access and review the financial documents to understand if they might be contributing to any system performance issues before continuing with the hardware diagnostic. The correct answer is B. Secure the sensitive files without accessing their content, document the discovery, and inform the customer or their designated representative for further instructions before proceeding with the diagnostic. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support where a technician encounters sensitive customer data during a routine repair. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need to perform the repair effectively with the strict legal and ethical obligations regarding data privacy and security. The technician must make a judgment call that upholds these obligations without compromising the service provided. The CompTIA Core 2 exam emphasizes practical application of knowledge, and this scenario tests the technician's understanding of responsible data handling in a real-world context. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves recognizing the sensitive nature of the data and taking immediate, appropriate steps to protect it. This aligns with the principles of data privacy and security mandated by regulations such as the U.S. federal laws governing data protection, e.g., HIPAA for health information, COPPA for children's online privacy, and general principles of data minimization and security found in various state laws and industry best practices. Best professional practice dictates that a technician should not access, copy, or retain any customer data beyond what is strictly necessary to diagnose and repair the device. If the data is clearly personal or sensitive, the technician should inform the customer or their authorized representative about the discovery and seek guidance on how to proceed, or if possible, secure the data without viewing its contents. This upholds the customer's right to privacy and avoids potential legal liabilities for the technician and the employing organization. Incorrect approach is analysis. Accessing and reviewing the customer's personal files, even with the intention of understanding the system's performance, constitutes a violation of privacy. This action could breach data protection laws and ethical codes of conduct, leading to legal repercussions and damage to professional reputation. It demonstrates a lack of respect for customer confidentiality. Copying the customer's files to a personal drive or cloud storage, regardless of the stated intention, e.g., for later analysis or as a backup, is a severe breach of data security and privacy. This action creates unauthorized copies of sensitive information, increasing the risk of data exposure and violating data protection regulations. It also raises concerns about intellectual property and unauthorized data transfer. Ignoring the sensitive nature of the files and proceeding with the repair without any consideration for data privacy is negligent. While the technician might be focused on the technical task, this oversight can lead to unintended data exposure or breaches if the repair process itself inadvertently interacts with or exposes the sensitive data. It fails to meet the standard of care expected in handling customer devices and data. Professional reasoning. Professionals encountering sensitive data should follow a decision-making framework that prioritizes data privacy and security. This framework includes 1. Identification. Recognize the presence of potentially sensitive data. 2. Containment. Avoid unnecessary interaction with the data. 3. Notification. Inform the customer or appropriate authority about the discovery and seek instructions. 4. Documentation. Record the discovery and the actions taken. 5. Secure handling. If data must be accessed for repair, do so minimally and securely, adhering to company policy and legal requirements. This systematic approach ensures compliance, protects customer trust, and mitigates risk. Question 17. Research into the implications of a user requesting direct access to a shared network drive containing sensitive customer data for a third-party vendor. What is the most appropriate course of action for an IT support technician to take to ensure regulatory compliance and data security? Option A. Grant the user direct access to the shared drive to facilitate the vendor's work, assuming the vendor is reputable. Option B. Implement a temporary, undocumented workaround to provide the vendor with the necessary data access. Option C. Deny the request immediately, informing the user that such access is not permitted under any circumstances. Option D. Escalate the request to the security team or supervisor for review and approval according to established organizational policies. Correct answer is D. Escalate the request to the security team or supervisor for review and approval according to established organizational policies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support, balancing user convenience with the imperative of data security and regulatory compliance. The technician is faced with a request that, while seemingly simple and aimed at improving user workflow, carries significant risks if not handled according to established protocols. The professional challenge lies in identifying the potential security and compliance implications of the user's request and navigating the organizational policies designed to mitigate these risks. The technician must exercise judgment to ensure that any solution implemented does not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or violate data handling regulations relevant to the CompTIA, a Plus Core 2 exam scope, which implicitly assumes a U.S. regulatory environment for general IT practices, unless otherwise specified. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of organizational security policies and data privacy regulations. By escalating the request to the security team or supervisor, the technician ensures that the proposed solution is reviewed by individuals with the authority and expertise to assess its compliance with relevant U.S. laws, such as HIPAA for healthcare data or PCI DSS for payment card information, depending on the organization's industry and internal security standards. This process guarantees that any data access or sharing mechanism is properly vetted for security vulnerabilities and legal adherence, representing best professional practice by prioritizing data protection and regulatory compliance over immediate user gratification. This aligns with the ethical responsibility of IT professionals to safeguard sensitive information. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the solution without proper authorization or review bypasses critical security checkpoints. This creates a direct regulatory and ethical failure. For example, if the data involved is sensitive, e.g., personally identifiable information or protected health information, unauthorized access or sharing could lead to violations of privacy laws like HIPAA, resulting in significant fines and reputational damage for the organization. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of professional diligence and a disregard for established security protocols, which are designed to prevent data breaches and maintain system integrity. This approach prioritizes expediency over security and compliance, a fundamentally flawed decision-making process in IT. Another incorrect approach is to refuse the request outright without explanation or offering alternatives. While it avoids a security breach, it fails to address the user's underlying need and can lead to user frustration and a perception of unhelpfulness. Ethically, IT professionals should strive to find solutions that meet user needs while remaining compliant. A complete refusal without exploring compliant alternatives is a failure in customer service and problem solving. Finally, attempting to implement a workaround that is not officially sanctioned or documented is also a significant failure. Such workarounds often introduce undocumented vulnerabilities, are difficult to maintain, and can be easily exploited. This constitutes a regulatory failure if it leads to noncompliance with data handling standards and an ethical failure due to the inherent risk introduced without proper oversight. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such requests by first understanding the user's objective. Then, they must consult organizational policies and relevant regulations to determine the appropriate course of action. If the request falls outside standard procedures or raises security concerns, escalation to the appropriate authority, e.g., security team supervisor, is the next logical step. This ensures that decisions are made with full awareness of potential risks and compliance requirements. The decision-making process should always prioritize security, compliance, and ethical considerations, followed by user support and efficiency. Question 18. The evaluation methodology shows a technician is tasked with decommissioning several workstations that were used to store customer financial information. The company has a strict policy regarding data privacy and environmental responsibility. Which of the following actions best adheres to both regulatory compliance and professional best practices for handling this hardware? Option A. Wipe the hard drives using a standard file deletion utility and then donate the workstations to a local charity. Option B. Physically destroy the hard drives using a certified shredding service and then recycle the remaining components through an e-waste recycling program. Option C. Format the hard drives and then repurpose the workstations for internal testing. Option D. Immediately place the workstations in the general trash for disposal. The correct answer is B. Physically destroy the hard drives using a certified shredding service and then recycle the remaining components through an e-waste recycling program. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where a technician is tasked with disposing of old hardware containing sensitive customer data. This is professionally challenging because improper disposal can lead to severe data breaches, violating privacy regulations, and damaging the company's reputation. The technician must balance efficiency with strict adherence to data security and environmental compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data sanitization according to industry standards and regulatory requirements before physical disposal. This aligns with the principles of data protection and responsible e-waste management, which are often mandated by regulations like the U.S.'s Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for healthcare data, or the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, for financial data, and general data privacy laws. By ensuring data is unrecoverable, the technician upholds their ethical duty to protect customer information and avoids legal penalties. An incorrect approach that involves simply discarding the hardware without sanitization is a direct violation of data privacy laws and ethical obligations. This failure to protect sensitive information can result in significant fines, legal action, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach, such as donating the hardware without sanitization, carries the same risks of data exposure and regulatory noncompliance, as the recipient may not have adequate security measures. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on environmental recycling, without addressing data sanitization first, is incomplete and still exposes the organization to data breach risks, failing to meet the comprehensive requirements for secure data handling and disposal. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all potential risks, especially those related to data security and regulatory compliance. They should then consult relevant company policies and legal requirements for data handling and disposal. The chosen method must demonstrably mitigate these risks and satisfy all compliance obligations. If unsure, seeking guidance from legal or compliance departments is a crucial step. Question 19. System analysis indicates a user reports being unable to access critical project files stored on a secure network share. The user claims they need immediate access to meet a tight deadline and is becoming increasingly agitated. The technician knows the user's usual access permissions do not include this specific share, but the data within is considered sensitive and subject to data privacy regulations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the technician? Option A. Grant the user temporary access to the files to resolve their immediate issue, as the deadline is critical and the user is distressed. Option B. Advise the user to try accessing the files through a less secure personal cloud storage service to bypass the network restrictions. Option C. Verify the user's identity and current authorization level, and if access is not granted by policy, follow the established procedure for requesting elevated access or escalate to a supervisor or IT security team. Option D. Provide the user with the login credentials of a colleague who has the necessary access, so they can retrieve the files quickly. Correct answer is C. Verify the user's identity and current authorization level, and if access is not granted by policy, follow the established procedure for requesting elevated access or escalate to a supervisor or IT security team. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support, balancing user convenience and data access with the critical need for regulatory compliance and data security. A technician might be tempted to grant immediate access to a user's files to resolve their issue quickly, especially if the user is distressed or the request seems minor. However, the technician must recognize that unauthorized access to sensitive data, even for a seemingly benign purpose, can have significant legal and ethical repercussions under regulations like HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. If the data is protected health information, or SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, if it pertains to financial records of publicly traded companies, the professional challenge lies in adhering to strict data access policies and privacy regulations while still providing effective and timely support. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to established data access policies and procedures, which are designed to ensure regulatory compliance. This means verifying the user's identity and authorization level before granting access to any sensitive data. If the technician is not authorized to access the data directly, they must follow the proper escalation path, which might involve contacting a supervisor, the IT security team, or the data owner. This process ensures that access is logged, auditable, and compliant with relevant regulations, protecting both the organization and the individual whose data is being accessed. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and due diligence required by many data privacy laws. Incorrect approaches analysis. Granting access without proper verification or authorization is a direct violation of data privacy regulations and organizational policies. This could lead to unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information, data breaches, and significant legal penalties for the organization. Ethically, it breaches the trust placed in the IT department to protect user data. Providing access based on a user's perceived urgency or seniority without following established protocols bypasses necessary security controls. This creates a vulnerability that could be exploited, and it undermines the integrity of the organization's security posture. It also sets a dangerous precedent for future requests. Suggesting the user bypass security protocols or use alternative, less secure methods to access their data is also a failure. This not only compromises data security, but also demonstrates a lack of understanding or disregard for the importance of regulatory compliance and established security best practices. Professional reasoning. Professionals should always prioritize adherence to established policies and regulatory requirements. When faced with a request that might conflict with these, the decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the nature of the data involved and any associated regulatory requirements e.g. PI 5 financial data. 2. Verifying the identity and authorization of the requester. 3. Consulting established access control policies and procedures. 4. If direct access is not permitted or authorized, following the defined escalation path or seeking guidance from appropriate personnel, e.g., IT security, compliance officer, supervisor. 5. Documenting all actions taken and decisions made. This systematic approach ensures that support is provided responsibly, ethically, and in full compliance with legal obligations. Question 20. Which approach would be most appropriate for an IT support technician when a remote employee requests access to sensitive customer financial data from their personal device, given the organization operates under U.S. Federal Data Protection Guidelines? Option A. Grant direct access to the sensitive data from the personal device, assuming the employee is trustworthy and the risk is minimal. Option B. Provide the employee with a temporary, less secure login that allows access to the data for a limited time to expedite their work. Option C. Advise the employee to use a public Wi-Fi network for better connection speed and allow direct access to the data from their personal device. Option D. Implement robust endpoint security measures on the personal device, enforce multi-factor authentication for access, and ensure the data is accessed only through a secure, encrypted company-provided virtual desktop environment. The correct answer is D. Implement robust endpoint security measures on the personal device, enforce multi-factor authentication for access, and ensure the data is accessed only through a secure, encrypted company-provided virtual desktop environment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT support, balancing user convenience with the imperative to protect sensitive company data. The professional must navigate the potential for data leakage and unauthorized access while ensuring business operations are not unduly hindered. The core of the challenge lies in implementing security measures that are effective without being so cumbersome that they lead users to circumvent them, thereby creating even greater risks. The correct approach prioritizes data security and compliance with organizational policies, which are themselves designed to align with relevant U.S. federal regulations concerning data privacy and security, such as those that might be influenced by HIPAA or PCI DSS, depending on the industry, and general best practices for information security management. This approach involves understanding the sensitivity of the data being accessed and implementing controls proportionate to that risk. It emphasizes a layered security strategy that includes technical controls, like encryption and access controls, and policy enforcement. This represents best professional practice because it proactively mitigates risks of data breaches, unauthorized disclosure, and noncompliance with legal and regulatory obligations. It demonstrates a commitment to protecting the organization's assets and reputation. An incorrect approach that involves simply granting broad access without proper vetting or controls fails to uphold the organization's responsibility to protect sensitive information. This could lead to violations of data privacy laws, resulting in significant fines, legal repercussions, and reputational damage. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to safeguard company and customer data. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing overly restrictive policies that significantly impede legitimate business functions, can lead to user frustration, decreased productivity, and potentially encourage users to seek unauthorized workarounds, thereby creating new security vulnerabilities. While security is paramount, it must be balanced with operational needs. A third incorrect approach, which relies solely on user self-reporting of security incidents without any proactive monitoring or verification, creates a reactive and insufficient security posture. This leaves the organization vulnerable to undetected breaches and delays in incident response, which can exacerbate the impact of a security event and violate regulatory requirements for timely breach notification. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing the likelihood and impact of those threats, and then implementing controls that are cost-effective and proportionate to the identified risks. This framework encourages a proactive rather than reactive stance on security and ensures that decisions are grounded in a thorough understanding of potential consequences and regulatory requirements.